Okay, if you want to start out and introduce yourself.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Reveka Shteynberg, and I'm an assistant professor at Cal State San Bernardino. I got my PhD at the University of Albany SUNY in the Department of Criminal Justice, and I got my undergraduate degrees from the University of California, Irvine in Criminology, Law, and Society. So a lot of my background is a little different than most criminologists. I really try to understand issues from an access to justice point of view, more from a political science and psychology framework and policy and kind of public administration understanding of things. And so when I look at the criminal justice system, I'm really trying to look at it from more of an organizational process-based understanding of how the system functions. And so most of my research focuses on courts, on juvenile justice policies, and on how practitioners use their discretion to enforce policies, and also how individuals on the recipient end up being able to access justice in the way that those discretionary actions impact those decisions, how we kind of frame society, really. Which kind of leads into why I like the show, The Good Place, which is that it's basically a microcosm of our world. I think it does a really good job of showing us why we behave the way that we do, how we behave. It gives us so much food for thought in terms of how we understand both actions of individuals, but also of organizations. Mm-hmm. And I think that a big piece of it is, the show's about really crime and punishment, right? Law and order, and how we treat people, and how we should treat people based on the actions and how many points they accumulate in their life. Mm-hmm. And how we as organizations kind of design the system. Also, I'm a nerd, and I think of everything from a research design, like research study standpoint. Mm-hmm. And I think it is literally just somebody's research design dream, all the randomized control trials, right? It is such a big piece of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing you nodding, but like I nerd out over research design and methodology.
No, absolutely. I'm the same way. And it's amazing because this is like the perfect study, the perfect set of conditions that would never get through an institutional review board.
I can't imagine just proposing to the IRB at the university, hey, so we're just going to wipe people's memories thousands upon thousands of times and put them in these awful situations, right? Like when people think about criminal justice and randomized control trials, like you can't put people in these bad situations. Like we think of the prisoner's dilemma issue, right, and how individuals and what is it called? The actions that they take on in the Stanford prison study, and how people were forced to do certain things. We're like, what, the Tuskegee, we gave people HIV just to see how they would handle it without any solutions? We can't do that in real life. Yeah. But it's nice to think about. And it's a good thought experiment.
And then there's like a philosophical component to it, which is really prevalent in the criminal justice system and all that we do, like this foundation of it. Yeah. But it's a lot more fun than just typical philosophy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
After I watched The Good Place, I tried thinking like I should get into philosophy, and then I got through like half an article, and I'm like, this is awful. Like I don't want to do this.
I've taken some philosophy classes back in undergrad, like philosophy of logic and things like that, because at that time I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and no. Right. But all of those things, I mean, morality, right? I mean, this show really just encompasses, sociology, philosophy, economics, business, public affairs, public policy, psychology. I mean, all the psychology. There's just a law, right? There's so many interesting kind of things in terms of morality, and philosophy really is where it's kind of all in there. I think, what was it? Someone was saying, I was reading somewhere how they really use Sartre's kind of description that hell is other people. Right. And then later in the show, they're like, no, the good place is other people. Like, let's show us how. It's kind of that fun philosophy aspect of it.
Yeah, it was really, I think, just a unique, kind of really brilliant show with some of just like the dumbest things you've ever heard. Like I felt like I was tricked into learning, which was super cool.
Yes.
But then when you said you wanted to think about this through a criminology, criminal justice lens, I was like, well, now I have to go back and rewatch like the whole thing through that lens. But I'm excited about it. So I think if you want to give maybe like a 1-minute summary of the show for people in case they haven't watched it, maybe encouraging them to watch it if they're not already hooked on it, tricks us into learning philosophy.
Yes, that's the thing that I always love, to tell students that I'm tricking them into learning. It's definitely a good model. But okay, so here's the short and sweet version without too many spoilers. The show is basically premised on the fact that people can change. And can they change, and how much can they change? I think that's a large aspect of this show, is trying to see how individuals grow in different circumstances. And so we start off in the show with Eleanor, who's the main character, and she is basically sent to the good place, except she realizes, oh crap, they made a mistake. They sent the wrong Eleanor, because she sees this clip of her past life, and she's like, no, that was a humanitarian. And in her words, I'm an Arizona trash bag / dirt bag. And so now she's just so afraid of being thrown out of the good place and being sent to the bad place that she's trying to learn all these things. And so then we're introduced to this character, Chidi, who's a previous philosopher on Earth, right? And so she tasks him with teaching her about morality and how to be a better human being. And through that, we learn that, well, Chidi's maybe not the best thing either, because he's so focused on making the right decision, he's just paralyzed by action. And so that's not necessarily the best thing. And so he actually learns from her as well. And then we also have a couple other characters, Tahani and Jason. Tahani's kind of this socialite who thinks she's the best thing, and she does all these philanthropic things, but really it's to like appease her parents, get approval, name drop, and be better than her sister. And then we have Jason, who's basically just this like lovable doofus who gets into trouble, and he's literally the epitome of the positivist school of thought, where not really like he's not committing crime because he's rationally thinking about it. It's because he just he's not smart enough to sometimes avoid those situations. He has a lot of impulse control issues. And then we also have the mastermind, right, behind this whole thing. Michael, the demon, the guy who created the good place, which we later learn is the bad place. And really, this is just him having fun creating a society where he tortures people over and over and over again, in his randomized control study, where he wipes people's minds and sees them torture each other because he thinks people torture each other. And then he's surprised to learn that, hey, no, people actually grow from each other. And that's kind of the basic premise. And then we later in different seasons see that they not only can grow for each other or individually, but also they can help other people grow.
Yeah, and I think over time we see, like within episodes, we see kind of rehabilitation and this personal growth, but we see it over the course of every season and then over the course of the show. So I guess we can start with the really like a quick kind of learning example where Eleanor goes from being an Arizona trash bag, which is, I've started referring to myself as a New Jersey trash bag pretty often. But we can watch a quick scene from that if we want to watch this first cleanup after the flying incident. We can watch that and then go from there. So in this scene, there were flying lessons during the day. Everybody got to fly around and be fun. But there was a mishap and trash started raining down from the sky. And Eleanor and Chidi decided to pitch in and help clean up. Chidi kind of forced Eleanor to do this, right? So what do you think we learned from Eleanor in this just really quick clip about her contributions to society?
I mean, I think the basic premise is there was also a flashback where she was just an awful human being back on Earth and just took advantage of everyone and everything and never really gave back. And in this clip where she's actually kind of giving back, even though she's forced to do it, she actually does realize that she feels guilt. And I think that was actually surprising to her. You could actually see that on her face throughout the kind of the later part of that episode, where she's realizing, oh yeah, moral compass. I should actually do things for other people and not just myself. And it's kind of that rehabilitation aspect. Sometimes we have to force people into doing a little bit of community service to really see that advantage.
Yeah, she seemed interestingly like an asshole in that, right? She's like, I'm in heaven, I'm resentful, I'm too cool for this. Like, why would I clean things up? And ironically, everybody there, because they're all wonderful people in the good place, are like, we love cleaning up. This is great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so in this second clip, in this flying cleanup clip, she, like you said, has this realization and becomes a better person. Do you think we get there with criminal justice and rehabilitation and making people better?
So that's a really difficult question because I think it all depends on intent, right? It's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. No one's going to help you unless you're going to be willing to help yourself. You have to be at the right place. You have to hit rock bottom. And I think for Eleanor, she's hit rock bottom because she's literally in the last place she can be. And now she's trying to redeem herself. And I think when it comes to rehabilitation and the deterrence aspect of it, it honestly depends on the design of the actual rehabilitation. I think it also, this is my biggest thing, we have to let people fail. We're
Mm-hmm.
all going to fuck up, and we have to have support systems, and we have to have people in place, right? Like if you think about drug court, there's no way that just because I got into drug court, I'm just going to stop doing drugs if I'm a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to end up doing drugs again and again. And I take a urine test and my probation officer's like, well, it didn't come back clean, you're going back to jail. Well, like maybe that's not the best approach to just take away everything, right? You have to give people a way to kind of redeem themselves. And I think in the show, Eleanor is given that over and over and over again, and she can grow. I don't know that we do that very well in the criminal justice system. In fact, I think in a lot of places we set people up to fail. And this is a big thing for me. Malcolm Feely wrote a book called The Process is the Punishment. That's literally the good place.
Right.
The entire process of it is a freaking punishment. The pre-trial process that we put people through, throughout it all, the rehabilitation aspects. It's the process that's the punishment, but we're trying to get people to be better. And so we have to kind of design a better system.
Yeah, and I think if we think about it, in the project with everybody in the good place trying to make them better is a manifestation of like rehabilitation versus in the actual bad place with butthole spiders and hot dog stuffing.
Yep.
That if we just say, even comparatively speaking, that rehabilitation for many people is the optimal choice rather than sending everyone to the bad place and just letting the butthole spiders do their business. But like you said, it doesn't work. It's not a blanket fix all for everything. So I think it's a little bit more nuanced. But even if, just because I'm a crim theory nerd, this last scene with Chidi being, I think, Eleanor's guide and her guru is like a social bond element, right? Like he's bringing her in, he's creating these attachments with her and the community and the people, which is really like what we need to see more of in terms of rehabilitation, not just this magic wand.
Oh, completely. I mean, if you think about the research on how to get gang members to desist or how to get people from the KKK to desist, right? You get people who have desisted previously to mentor these people, right? You're not going to just get them to succeed. Who's going to listen to me, who's never been in a gang, about how to leave a gang? Like, I can research the topic from day one to the end of my days. And frankly, I'm never going to be in a place to be able to really speak from experience. So we have to have people guiding. And I think Chidi can do that because he's kind of in a similar, he's, coming from a different point of view, but he's coming in from the same kind of place. And I agree, social bonds is such an important aspect. And also, I mean, we see so much, right? Learning theory, we see social disorganization theory. I mean, just so many different aspects of just how behavior can kind of grow and be shaped by other people and experiences.
And how it can be derailed too. Yeah, how it can be like derailed all of a sudden too, just from outside circumstances. And I feel like we'd be remiss, because you mentioned this, without talking about Brett.
Oh yeah.
Because all the characters are really like dynamic and incredible. And when you mentioned Brett, and I told you this before we started, I instantly thought like white collar criminal, but you had a different take on it.
Yeah. I mean, for me and just understanding how people behave, I mean, he's basically what we see as the epitome of privilege, right? He's the guy who had everything handed to him and thinks he earned it all, and thinks he's deserving of being in the best place, not just the good place, because he's just amazing. And he doesn't realize how sexist and racist everything he says is. I mean, he just takes everything for granted and doesn't really learn, because he never had to be in a place where he was forced to learn. When people have everything handed to them, they take it for granted. And I think that's part of the white collar crime thing, though, right? When people are in a position of authority and they think things just, they can't put themselves in those other people's shoes to understand. And that's also from an organizational point of view. I mean, when we think about judges, as I was saying before we started, a lot of them, I mean, they look very similar. A lot of them are white, older, male. I mean, same thing for academia, but it's changing. But generally, they've never been in situations of disadvantage and crazy amounts of poverty, or been targets of racism and sexism or other types of discrimination. And so they can't always understand what it means to not have $500 in the bank account to be able to make $500 bail, which most people in America don't have $400 for emergencies. If you've never had that level of disadvantage, how are you going to be able to put yourself in those people's shoes who do have that disadvantage?
Right.
I mean, that's Brent in a nutshell.
It is. And I feel like we all know a Brent.
Yes, there are so many of them.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching them for the first time, and I had a visceral reaction to him when he told Janet to smile more. I was just like, I'm not okay right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2020 and there's an election going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's amazing. I mean, there's so many articles out there about this, but women that have to kind of put on that, you're saying the shittiest thing, but if I come off looking like a bitch, that's going to shoot me in the foot. And so I have to kind of
smile.
And like,
please tell me more.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, unfortunately, that's the reality we live in, but also that's a reality that the Brents of the world and the Karens of the world facilitate.
And they perpetuate it, and it's still celebrated. Although last night's vice presidential debate gave me hope, but we watched Kamala Harris do the exact same thing because she had to, as a result of race and gender expectations.
I mean, that's a driving force behind so much. I mean, first of all, I think The Fly stole the show, but has its own Twitter account, right? I don't know that this part will age well, but that's, I mean, like, it's amazing when The Fly steals the show because of so much dysfunction in our political system, right? I was saying this earlier, but all politics is local, and in the good place, the bad place, and the middle place, it really, really is. I think we can kind of see it that way. And also, I think in the good place, it assumes people are rational. And I think that's one of my favorite things, because people aren't rational. I mean, maybe the closest is bounded rationality, right? Like, we all kind of gravitate to rationality from our own experiences, our own framework. But what's rational to me isn't going to be rational to you based on your experiences. And I think that's kind of the funnest part of the show.
Yes.
And how it applies to criminal justice. Because frankly, like I said, Jason, not super rational, and Chidi is super rational, and those are just like, they're parts of the continuum, and I think that's just a really fun thing to see with the show.
It absolutely was, and all the explorations of gender and race and socioeconomic status, even within the show.
Oh yeah,
there are just so many directions. I feel like we could talk for hours about this show.
Well, there's so many episodes too, but no, I completely agree, and I think we see a lot of it with Jason too versus Tahani, because she comes from this privileged background, and then Jason comes from basically a criminal family. I mean, that's really the way to think about it, right? Like, his legacy is crime. I mean, there was, I think, a quote where his father said, well, I'm taking a fall for you for this crime, and then you'll do it for your son the way that my father did it for me. And Jason's like, what? No, I hope not. Like, what?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of that's very much similar to how reality really works, right?
Well, no, that's a life course. That's a life course example right there.
Yeah. Right. Although I think we actually, the good part is, I mean, you have the age crime curve. Most people age out of crime at the time they're in the mid-20s. Ironically, with The Good Place, it takes them thousands and hundreds of thousands of attempts to actually age out of their bad place mentalities, which I think is kind of an interesting kind of twist on it. I don't know. There's definitely a lot of really interesting kind of models on it that we can talk about. I agree. There's just hours.
We might need to do a part 2 of this.
Kind of like those TikToks where it's like, I'm running out of time in 60 seconds. Part 1, wait for part 2.
I think I'm too old for TikTok at this point. But I really do thank you for joining me for this. I'm sure that people are going to want to hear more about Eleanor and Chidi. But it was an honor having you on and talking to you.
It was so much fun. Thank you. I love nerding out over shows.
Absolutely.